You're listening to Speaking Sidemount, the podcast where we talk all things sidemount diving, from equipment, skills, techniques, and sidemount diving expeditions to interviews with some of the world's top sidemount divers. Whether you're new to sidemount, been sidemount diving for years, or just want to know more, this is the place for all things sidemount. I'm your host, Steve Davis. Let's get wet.
Hey, welcome back to Speaking Sidemount. I'm Steve Davis. Oh, so much to cover in the intro to this episode, brought to you with the support of our amazing sponsor XDEEP and the patrons of Speaking Sidemount. My continued heartfelt thanks to both for their support, which makes the production of this show possible. So let's get the bad or hard news out of the way. COVID is continuing to screw with all of us, and despite a heap of positivity around opening up, for sure, there is more work to be done in the marathon task of getting past this pandemic. Personally, I'm proud that my entire family is now fully vaccinated, and yes, we're all well, and we're pleased to do our part for ourselves, our community, and eventually we're looking forward to the travel privileges that this will bring when our borders can open up some. Unfortunately, the Flow Sidemount event in Sardinia that Daniele, my guest in episode 65, has been cancelled due to COVID. Completely understandable, but hugely disappointing given the work that Daniele and Mariona at Blue Foria had done putting this all together. For sure, this event will run next year, so all is not lost, and it will be in my calendar as soon as the dates are set. Look out for that if you'd like to join us at Flow Sardinia in 2022. Now, on a positive note, as you may have seen, I've finally got my hands on a set of the new XDEEP NX700 regulators. Skanda and I talk about them a bit in a few moments, but as this episode is released, I've knocked out some awesome open circuit sidemount dives on the Canterbury Wreck, and the weather gods willing, I'll be back out there this weekend with the NX700s on my diluent and bailout cylinders with the KISS Sidewinder rebreather. They are high performance rigs for sure. They breathe beautifully with very low resistance in all orientations, and where they really stand out is the immense amount of thought put into hose routing and the unique LP swivel, which makes for a very streamlined configuration in the water and a tidy setup out of the water. Check out the Sidemount Pro's YouTube channel for some footage of me putting these rigs through their paces, and for patrons, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Now, in other product release news, I saw that the long-awaited sealed dry suits are now also out. Despite being very happy with my SF Tech dry suit, I've been following the progress of these suits as I consider a second suit to complement what I have, and for sure, if one is away for repairs, then you do have another dry suit. Now, I've watched Patrick Woodman, Skanda, and a few others of the Protec team diving these suits. They certainly look the part, and at the end of this episode, Skanda shares his thoughts on the sealed dry suit and what makes it stand out from the crowd. And so on with this episode, and I was pondering how to title this one. Given this is the second one with Skanda Caulfield, I considered Skanda 2, The Return of Skanda, Skanda Strikes Back, The Revenge of Skanda, Skanda Revisited, Skanda The Next Chapter, Skanda Endgame, Skanda Reloaded. But given that Skanda reached out to me to revisit and elaborate of some of his best cave exploration projects and dives, and key in these dives has been the addition of the KISS Sidewinder to the Protec Tulum arsenal of cave diving tools, I think we'll call this one Skanda 2 KISS Sidewinder Exploration. Now, as we chat, Skanda shares more on the amazing exploration projects he's been working on with the Protec team and Philip Lehman, including many that are part of the Somos Los Cenotes initiative. Check that out way back in episode 36. Now, many of these projects are in hard-to-get-to areas and also involving deeper dives that support the choice of rebreathers. Again, huge thanks to Skanda for giving up his time to share with all of us in this episode of Speaking Sidemount.
Skanda, welcome back to Speaking Sidemount.
Thanks very much, Steve. It's good to be back.
Awesome. And that was only a few weeks ago you and I were speaking, and we just talked off mic a little about how you were thinking that maybe there was a few little pieces you can add in, especially on the exploration side. And we may end up using some of this as a bonus for our patrons, which I'm very, very appreciative of. Thank you very much on behalf of them and myself for doing that. So let's get into it. So we were talking
Yep.
about your exploration projects in Mexico, and I know a lot of them are kind of under wraps for a whole variety of reasons. So tell us a bit more about the projects you're working on and the ones in particular that you had in mind when you raised this with me.
Yeah, for sure. Just a little, I guess, caveat or aside on the keeping things under wraps. In part, it's because it's not just my project, it's the whole team. So, I don't want to talk too much about what we're doing. It's not necessarily just my project or that kind of thing. It's a sort of team project. When Philip Lehman from Dominican Republic is here, we do a lot of diving together. So a lot of it is stuff with him. So
He's such a cool guy too, isn't he?
he's a legend.
You can't even say a rounded human being because that wouldn't give him justice, in
No.
terms of the art and the music and the diving and everything that guy is into. It's amazing.
He's such a renaissance man. And everything that he does, he's so good at it. Like you get him talking about music and it's like, wow, another world. And then, he's got his surfing and then he's making surfboards and then the diving and then the graffiti and it's.
And we didn't even mention video, of course. His videos just blow me away. I don't try and copy his style, but I look at his style and it's just so amazing the way that he's able to produce such amazing footage on what are amazing exploration projects. So, a lot of his footage is not coming in normal cave, is it? It's coming in cave. It's difficult to access and it's just brilliant.
Totally. So we do a lot of diving together when he's in Mexico and leave off those projects. But some of the things that I was thinking about, I didn't mention last time that was super cool was Sidewinder enabled exploration. We have a few projects that I guess without the Sidewinder would not really be feasible or would be really quite challenging otherwise. Last year around Puerto Morelos, we did a little bit of cenote scouting with some local people there and did a day just to go and check what they had. They were like, come and have a look. We've got cenotes. We want you to dive them. We want to know what's underneath, sort of thing. So it's always cool when that happens. Like so many times we were told, no one's been here. This is, undived. And the first two that they took us to, the first one was like literally a well. And we were looking down and we could see water was at the bottom of the well. And we were like, it looks like a lot of effort. We'll come back to this one. So then we, on the same property or next to the property, there was another cenote that had, a nice ladder going down, platform, looked like it had been set up for diving and really seemed like, how could no one have dived here before sort of thing. But we didn't see any line. We jumped in and then we kind of discovered why no one had actively explored it. It was a thick hydrogen sulfide, full of bacteria, super nasty, low visibility, disgusting cenote.
Just for those who don't realize, talk just for a moment before you go further, what it's like going through a really thick hydrogen sulfide layer like that. What do you feel? What do you see?
Yeah, the visibility is pretty low. It's like smoky, hazy, foggy layer in the water. But I guess because of the bacterial colonies everywhere, there was no layer. You descended and you're in hydrogen sulfide, varying layers of thickness. So visibility is crap. You can't really see. And then we were diving open circuit. Our bubbles were dislodging. The bacterial colonies were growing on the ceiling as well. So now, you've got these chunks of black bacterial goo raining down on you that's then breaking apart and affecting visibility as well. And you're looking at it coming down and you're like, oh, I need to change my regulators, but don't really want to take it out of my mouth. So we put a big loop around that cenote and it was pretty round and there wasn't really any cave entrances going. It didn't seem like there was any flow. It just seemed like it was a pretty sort of closed, stagnant cenote. And I didn't really want to hang out in there for an extended period of time to really try and find anything else around. Generally with hydrogen sulfide, we get it in a lot of the sinkholes here because there's not a lot of water exchange. So you've got the sinkhole, you've got the hydrogen sulfide, and unlike the cave systems where there's water exchange moving through, it just tends to sit there. So I'm sure people have seen photos of cenote Angelita and those kind of places where you've just got a flat layer, looks like a cloud. And you sort of get that in places where there isn't the water exchange. So because basically from the surface down it was hydrogen sulfide, we thought there wasn't really any chance to find any going cave passages there. So we get out of the water a little bit bummed, but we've got the well to go and check. So luckily for that day, we decided we'd throw a ladder in the back of the truck because we weren't sure, you know, if these guys were going to have ladders to access the water or not. But the ladder wasn't quite long enough. So we had the exciting situation where you've got like, so from the lip of the well, then the ladder was tied on with a rope. Wasn't fixed though, because it didn't reach the bottom. So we had two of the guys that were helping us sort of lower me halfway down on the ladder. And then I sort of braced myself on the sides of the well, and then they lowered it down to the water. And then I got back on the ladder and climbed all the way down.
Yeah.
And then was in this sort of beautiful little cavern, like air dome, really nice, pretty decorated, and had a bit of a look around while I was waiting for my tanks to get lowered down. And over there I see lines, of course, you know, like, oh yeah, you know, like so many times people tell us, yeah, no one's dove here. This is completely untouched. Okay, someone's been there before us. But anyway, I was there, wanted to be able to tell them what it was like, wanted to be able to tell the owners where the line was going, all that kind of thing. So went down and started surveying the line, and then it went down and kept going down, a big collapse. And then I got to a T at about 35 meters, went down one side, and then it was getting down to like 40, 45 meters, and I was on nitrox 32. So I was like, yeah, this is not ideal right now. So I called it for myself, came back, had a little bit of a look around the cavern area, which was quite a big open cavern, not very light because we only had the well and another hole in the ceiling, but kind of interesting formations and some little bones and stuff. But just with the gas, wasn't really able to go down and see if the cave continued. Then fast forward a few months, and we decided we'd go back with the Sidewinders and with some Trimix after I'd done a Trimix course to go and check to see what else is there. So rocked up there, got all the tanks ready, lowered all the tanks down through the well. This time we had a longer ladder that reached all the way. So from the top, we could like comfortably climb down. And then, went down and got to the T, kept going a little bit. And then pretty quickly the line ended, like in a big tunnel that then had collapsed at one end. And this was at about 50 meters. So looking like, well, kind of ends in front of us, but a little bit back and down on the side. It looked like it was a chance to squeeze and go through. So sort of tied off the reel at the end of the line there and sort of went down the side, followed the breakdown, followed the crack around. And then there was like enough space to sort of wiggle along the side of it. And this all was now at sort of 70 meters. So like looking at the depth, like, very happy to have Trimix, squeeze through, pop out into a huge tunnel that looks like the other side of this giant collapse. And I look back around and my buddy isn't coming through, and it's all pretty silted out at that point. So 65 meters, I'll hang out here for a minute. No, he's not coming. I'll just go up a little bit, lay a little bit more line, see what happens, and then go back and see what he's doing. So I went up, came up to maybe again 35, 40 meters, and in this giant room, this is pretty cool. But tied off my reel, went back surveying, and then met my buddy on the other side, and he had seen it silt out in front of him, and he was like, yeah, not going to go through a restriction in zero visibility at 70 meters. Maybe I'll just wait here. So he'd sort of hung out a little bit shallower. By that point, we'd racked up a fair bit of deco, so we decided we'd call it a day for that, and went back and checked the other side of the T, and didn't really find anything else coming off the initial cavern. Always had that in the back of the head as something we needed to go back and check. So then I guess that was in October last year. I went back another day and then pushed it, and cave went a little bit further, but a little bit more up and down. Not really particularly going, but we put a bit more line, and it continued a ways further. It is kind of cool because at that point was then the third deepest reported cave in the area.
Yeah, and just some background for everybody. I mean, the average depth of caves in that region is not very deep at all, is it?
I want to point out that that's a little bit of a myth because we do have various levels of cave. But yeah, totally. A lot of the perception is that Mexico's shallow cave, all sort of 15 meter range sort of stuff. And it's kind of like we have various levels. Shallow cave is sort of 5-6 meters, and then like a 12 meter level, and then a 15 meter level, and 20, and then 24, and then a 30 meter level. And then in some places there's an even deeper 35, 36 meter level. I guess compared on average to Florida and some of the caves in France and stuff, it's definitely shallower in terms of deep going cave, there's not a whole lot. There's the pit, there's the Blue Abyss in the Sakak Tun cave system, but there's not many other, at least reported or relatively well-known places where the cave does go deep and continues along. So we thought that was all pretty cool. And then, yeah, we haven't really been back since, but it didn't really look like it was continuing. But one day, we'll go back and have another look around.
And again, the strength of the Sidewinder, of course, is doing a deeper dive like that, and the amount of gas you need to carry. Of course, you need to carry bailout and so on, but you can stage bailout really easily, much more easily than open circuit. One interesting point, because I've got in a bit of trouble in New Zealand here for doing quite a bit of solo diving. I actually quite like it for a variety of reasons. It's very difficult in the regulatory environment here, though, because the government oversees shit here. And the operators, to be honest, I don't think they mind so much with me. It's more, if something goes wrong, the government goes after the operator as the responsible party. But I'm a big fan of it in certain circumstances. And of course, you've got to look after your safety and so on. But you made the point before, when you went through the restriction, you would have ended up spending a fair bit of time on your own. And the reality is that when you're doing cave exploration or certain types of diving, you're diving in a team, but it's solo diving in a team, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, solo diving is a kind of controversial subject, like coming from Australia, same, I guess, environment as New Zealand, but even more like from a cave diving perspective, the CDAA, Cave Diving Association of Australia, completely blacklists solo diving and makes it out to be a horrible, horrible thing. And if you solo dive, you're going to die a horrible death kind of thing. I teach cave diving. I teach team diving for cave divers. And I think that there's definitely a strength to diving in a team. You sort of have another person to keep watch, to help, more resources, all that kind of thing. But I also really like solo diving, and I think it has its place in cave diving. I would definitely not recommend solo diving for everybody, and I would definitely not recommend it without a lot of previous experience. Like I'm saying I go out solo diving, but this is me as a professional cave diver with 5 years cave diving experience pretty much every day, and a good thousands of cave dives now. I would definitely not say, oh, you finished your cave course, go out and go for a solo dive.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's a good example. I mean, a lot of what I'm doing is diving on the Canterbury wreck, which is a wreck which was my home for 6 years. That is a purpose sunk wreck, relatively benign, although you can get into trouble in there, as I have once. But the bottom line is that it's a site I know very well. I'll contrast that with the Mikhail Lermontov, which is an amazing wreck here in New Zealand. There's no way I'd dive that by myself. Yeah, there might be areas of it that you end up on your own with your buddy in close proximity, as happened on your particular dive, but it's just a different wreck and I don't know it as well, and I'm perfectly capable of diving it, but it's a different environment. So I think there's horses for courses there. I just wanted to raise that because it just kind of tweaked as you said it.
Definitely.
Let's move on. What else is happening?
So yeah, that was all pretty cool, and we want to go back there at some point. Interestingly enough, then pretty soon after that it all happened, then we pushed that, and that had become, I guess, the third deepest reported cave in the state. There'd been a cave that I can't remember if you've spoken to him or not, Tristan Turnat. Maybe you spoke to him.
Not yet.
No,
I need to. No. I know he's done a huge amount of exploration in
Mexico. Yeah. So he's a good friend and comes exploring with us, joins in the explorations a lot with Philip and the guys. He had dove a cave way back and had always wanted to go back and dive it, but had never got around to it. And we were trying to scout some more sites for exploration, really, to keep going, because wanted a few new projects. And he had said that, this was a place that he dove once, never went back, always wanted to go back, but someone should go back and check it, because he had dove it and it was a big sinkhole, and he had dove it down to 50 meters, felt really narked, didn't have gas, wasn't sure if it continued, but it should go and someone should go and recheck it, sort of thing. And he had been busy. We talked about going together, and then never quite happened, but I had a bit of time, and so I went out there. First of all, it was sort of a 20-25 minute hike from where we can park, carrying all the stuff. So I had two guys helping me carry gear out, and then Tristan had said that it was a bit of a climb to get down into the water, a bit of a rappel, take climbing gear. So like, okay, cool, we've got the tanks, we've got all the diving gear, we'll bring the climbing gear as well, let's head out there. We arrive and it's a giant sinkhole. It's big. It looks like it's 40, 50 meter diameter sort of thing. pretty impressive. And then it's like maybe 10, 15 meters down to the water. So we're sort of looking at that like, I'm not sure how comfortable I am going down now and doing a solo dive, potentially down to 50 meters to check something, and then having to use ascenders to climb up by myself without any other divers, no one else there apart from the guys that helped carry tanks. Like, in case something happens in the water, I wasn't really feeling comfortable. So I was like, let's come back another day. I'll bring someone else to come and be, if not come down all the way, but to be a little bit more of a support diver there in case anything happens. Because I was like, not really feeling comfortable right now with.
Here's a good example of when you shouldn't do it, right?
Oh, totally. So it was intimidatingly big. We went back, another diver, a bit more organized then, knew what to expect, had the Sidewinder then, went down and got to the end of this line. It was in about 50 meters in like this big collapse, and it just looked like it kept going. So I guess Tristan must have been pretty knocked at that point, because you could clearly see that the tunnel kept going a bit further down. So, well, I'm here, I've got gas and I've got a reel. I'll sort of tie into the end of his line, and kept going down, tying off, looking at the depth. Okay, 60 meters, 70 meters. And then it popped out into a giant tunnel at about 80, 85 meters. And at that point I was thinking like, wow, this is something else. This is pretty amazing. So put a little bit more line in, but then was like, this is the sort of place that I definitely want to be diving with other people, not just for the whole safety side of things, but to share it with other people, because this is super cool. So made a last tie off, cut the reel at 85 meters, and then sort of came back out and started doing deco. It was super cool, big tunnel. As I was doing deco, I swam around the whole of the sinkhole, and there wasn't really anything else coming off it. So it was just this big collapse that went down. Came out and told Tristan and told Patrick, and then they were like, we need to go back. And I think I was talking about it last time, that this is the place that we have been trying to arrange all the schedules to meet up so that we could all go back together. But we did manage to go back one more time. Tristan was open circuit and put a little bit more line, and then me and Patrick continued exploring it. The line continued, the cave continued, kept going, and we pushed it down to 100 meters. So
wow,
it was pretty amazing.
The 100-meter dive in a cave, it's something special.
It was pretty special. And to be exploring as well, to get to lay line in that kind of environment and that kind of depth doesn't happen every day. So that was pretty cool.
A lot of my listeners are starting out in Sidemount. Some of them are at the very beginning of open circuit training. Some of them are much more advanced. Some are instructors. There's the whole gambit. But let's talk for a moment, because I'm kind of partway through my journey, which won't ever go as far as you've gone there. But I'm partway through my journey of moving from a open circuit Trimix diver, cave diver, to a Trimix level. And so let's talk about what it takes to go from the open circuit levels and start to look at rebreather training and so on. I mean, what have you specifically done yourself to facilitate now being able to do those dives?
So back when I was living in Australia, I'd done up to advanced nitrox decompression procedures. So open circuit down to 45 meters-ish sort of stuff. And Melbourne has got a fantastic amount of wrecks in the 30 to 70 meter range. So I was able to do a lot of diving on the wrecks there up to sort of 50 meters. So I had a bit of experience doing that. And then some of the caverns around Mount Gambier go down quite deep as well. So sort of going down to 45-ish meters in a couple of caverns where it's allowed.
Well, Kilsby certainly goes that deep. Piccadilly, I think you're not allowed to go that deep now. But
you're not allowed to go deeper areas. 30 meters, but that definitely goes deep. And then there's another one called the Shaft as well. People pushed down to, I think, sub 100 meters as well. Trimix wasn't something I had done, but it had always been on the radar as a course that I wanted to do, and then had always looked at a few places around the world that I wanted to go and do Trimix training, and it never quite had happened. And then moving here and living in Mexico, it wasn't really a big priority, because there isn't many deeper sites that really warrant Trimix. I mean, there's a bit of deeper diving that you can do out in the ocean, like around Playa del Carmen. There's a wall that drops off that goes down forever, off Cozumel as well. And then there's a few of the deeper sinkholes, and especially inland in Yucatan state, around Merida, around Valladolid, there's a few sinkholes that go quite deep as well. But it wasn't really something that I did a lot of here. I mean, I joined a couple of advanced nitrox courses and did a few deco dives, like in Angelita, in the pit, there's a lagoon that's got a sinkhole in it called Khan Loom that goes down to 84 meters. So I've done a few sort of deeper deco dives there, but nothing that sort of warranted trimix. Then it sort of came about that Patrick was interested in pushing or having a look in the Blue Abyss. There's a number of restrictions that can't pass in back mount and rebreathers. So there's a Polish explorer, Chris Starnowski, who's got some amazing videos of him pushing dual side-mounted rebreathers through the restriction and pushing and exploring down there. With the Sidewinder, Patrick was interested in going through and seeing what could be done. So we sort of started to do a few team dives there to make that happen. And I was sort of helping out as a shallower support, carrying tanks, bailout tanks, deco tanks, all that kind of thing. Because to get there, we're going from the Hochna Chich, which is a ways away. There's sort of 60 minutes on the scooter sort of stuff. We were sort of doing the support down through the restriction at the bottom of the Blue Abyss, going from the Hochna Chich. It's a pretty steady 6 meters all the way, and then it gets a little bit deeper down to 10. And then you pop out and there's a giant hole in this cave tunnel that drops all the way down to about 70 meters at the bottom where the restriction is to pop through and keep going. Did a couple of dives there, sort of support for Patrick to go through, and then after a couple, one of the other guys, Jake, went through as well with Patrick, and they did some resurvey down there and sort of checked it out and that kind of thing. But of the other Sidewinder divers at Protec at the moment, only Jake was trimix trained. So we wanted to get the rest of us, and he was only up to normoxic. So we wanted to get the rest of us sort of trained up and be a little bit more helpful, I guess, and not just have it that Patrick could only go when Jake was free and that kind of thing. So we did our training then to sort of facilitate that, trying to make the most of it since. Because now we also have all these trimix tanks sitting around that are hardly being used, being on the rebreathers. If we don't bail out, we don't consume a whole lot of gas, which is beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's talk about, you've done normoxic and then obviously hypoxic, and we know the Sidewinder's rated to around 91 meters out of the box in terms of the leaky valve or the orifice. You're diving it with the orifice, or do you have the needle valve?
No, so I have an orifice on mine. So I think mine started to cut out around 90, 92, 93 meters. I mean, a lot of people see it as a kind of a disadvantage to the rebreather, but I actually think it's kind of nice because it means that when you're at that depth, you're not going to accidentally, or you're not going to have any problems with the O2 flowing in. If you press the O2 button or you have an internal boom at depth, you're not going to get really, really high O2 gas in your loop. And if you have bailout that works with the depths you're diving, you're going to be putting in dill at like 1.1, 1.2 anyway, as you put in diluent gas. So I don't really see it cutting out.
So all you're really doing is manually injecting oxygen from that depth and not relying on the orifice anymore. Is that what you're saying?
Oxygen cuts out as well. I'm not even able to press the button.
Right.
But if you put dill in, you're
at 1.1. So you might not be at a higher set point if you're running there, but you can run at 1.1, 1.2, whatever your dill is.
It. You know, for longer dives then with lots of deco, that's probably a preferred way of managing the decompression rather than running a high PPO2 at the bottom and then burning your lungs and then coming up and having to run a high PPO2.
Yeah, and how many bailout cylinders are you carrying on a dive like that? You're still carrying 2, or is it?
2, of course, always, because we're in Sidemount now.
Yeah. And
then had a couple staged along the way.
Right.
So, you know, there was deco bailout. So we had O2, 50, I think we had a lighter trimix, 45, something or other, and then another 1 or 2 tanks down there.
Interesting.
I'm sort of lining up to do that course now. That's why I'm so intrigued about it all. And I'm just trying to find an instructor that I can get to, is the truth of it. So I'm actually going to inquire about Australia. I think one of the wet mules can teach normoxic trimix on the Sidewinder now. So I'm going to check that out. And maybe even November, I might be able to do it. I might be foregoing a bit of cave diving. In New Zealand here, a lot of the diving that the guys I dive with are doing is on deeper shipwrecks. And then we've got some really nice deep sites at the Four Knights, which are just absolutely magnificent in terms of sea fans and black coral and so on. Yeah, it is. And I'm kind of stuck at the moment. You know, I can dive normoxic trimix open circuit, but it's so damned expensive. If you want to invest hundreds of dollars on top of your dive trip, you can do it. But I really want to get the winder down to 65 or so on normoxic. That would be a nice initial step. And then I can see how I go and decide whether I want to do a hypoxic course. It would just open up a lot more diving here, mainly in the ocean, to be honest. And then, of course, if there's cave diving to do there as well, then I'll do that. But at the moment, with the bubbles as they are, it'll mainly be in Mount Gambier. And I'm so excited about that. I'll be working on it a bit this afternoon, trying to set that trip up for the dive shop and working with. Excited about that.
Very cool. Very cool.
So have you got more?
Well, yeah, I guess having done that training and having the trimix lying around, then kind of from the Puerto Morelos exploration of the deep cave there, through the people that we knew from that, they also had some cenotes that they knew of around Valladolid. So we went over to Valladolid, which is an hour and a half-ish drive inland, sort of in the middle of the peninsula, and spent a week out there checking out some sinkholes. People had said that they dropped line in and went down to 70 meters, went down to 80 meters, which turned out to be a little bit generous. But, you know, we dove 3 or 4 different cenotes out there that were pretty cool, like big sinkholes where I guess either people hadn't dove before or, you know, hadn't left line or anything. And most of them were just a sinkhole with no cave coming off of them. But one of the ones that we actually did dive that was probably the coolest did have going cave. This one was about half an hour hike from where we parked the trucks. And then you go, and it was basically underneath the ruins of an old hacienda, an old plantation, and they'd been pumping out the water to use. Like, again, there was a big hole that had been the well that they'd been pumping out the water, but like on the side, there was a little bit of a broken dry cave that we were able to sort of squeeze in, so we didn't have to do a giant rappel down, because like from the well down to the water was like 30, 40 meters sort of stuff. That would have been like seriously annoying to climb out of. But luckily, we sort of able
going down's not such a problem.
Getting up is definitely the problem, especially after you've done a big deco dive. You don't really want to be doing a 40-meter climb on the ascenders.
There's a horrible video of me doing that coming out of Baker's Cave, and I don't know if you've ever done that one.
I did.
You go basically through a manhole, and it was just after I'd done my single ropes course, and I had ear infections. I was not feeling that happy, to be honest. And of course, being a newbie, I wasn't very efficient with my ascenders either, so I'm like struggling like crazy, and probably should have handed a bit more gear off too. I climbed out with my harness on. Sent my cylinders up, but I probably could have sent that up. It had a little bit of weight in it because I was wearing thick undergarments. It didn't make it look fun. No. And I don't even think that's very far. I think that's like 15 or something.
Yeah. It's never super fun, like doing a long ascent. And then like after a big dive, it's definitely probably not good from a DCS perspective. Luckily, we were able to avoid that. We went down through this little dry cave, and then again, it was a huge cavern, like, I don't want to say football field size, because people are going to accuse me of grossly exaggerating things, but it was pretty big.
Let's call it a large theatre or something.
A large theatre, a large theatre with a big surface pool, and I mean, wow, super impressive from like just above the water. And then that one, I did one dive to scout it before we went back. Then I went down, cut off my descent at about 45 meters. It looked like it kept going down, and then sort of swam around a bit the sides, and then found a cave tunnel at 20 meters and sort of poked my head in, put a bit of line into the tunnel. And then that day I was open circuit just for scouting. So then at that point I was sort of on turn pressure. So I came back, sent all the cylinders and harness up to be pulled up by the guys that were helping out, and then climbed out and gave the report to the other guys. Didn't reach the bottom, and there was a cave passage. Yay, we got to come back here. We did go back there one more day, And again, me and Jake went and dove. And so we went down and wanted to see how deep it went. So he pushed down and, for better or for worse, went down, went through a hydrogen sulfide layer, and then was basically on the bottom. So where I turned, if I just gone a little bit further down, would have hit the bottom and sort of bottomed out at 55 sort of thing. And then we sort of came up, checking on the walls to see if there was any openings. Just to give a bit of background for people listening, inland, there's not really any horizontal cave passage. A lot of the cenotes are just sort of sinkholes. They don't really have a lot of going passage. There is caves, but there's just nowhere near as common or as extensive as the coastal strip between Cancun and south of Tulum, where we have so much cave, so much horizontal passage. So yeah, we were pretty stoked to find this tunnel, and we pushed it, and it kept going. Really kind of weird looking, kind of cool, very different from the caves we normally dive here. I think we turned because of time and that kind of thing, but there was a few more potential leads. It wasn't super promising, but we did push out, I think it was put in like 400 meters of line or something into that cave. And yeah, so we were pretty happy about that. It's cool that we do one trip out there and we find a cenote that has horizontal cave, which...
Yeah, it seems to me there's so many sinkholes, so many beginnings of exploration projects. How do you decide on the ones that you're really going to go after, that you're going to go back to and keep pushing? Is it driven by the cave, its accessibility, how beautiful, all of the above?
Yeah, a bit of all of the above, and logistics also do play a bit of a part. I'm kind of lazy when it, like, happily go out and hike in the jungle to find cave and to go and explore cave, but if it's a 45-minute hike in and you've got to carry all your gear, it's a little bit less interesting than like something that is a lot easier to get to and park close by. So I guess that kind of fits then into talking about another one from last year that I think we kind of touched on or mentioned maybe when I was talking about the Somos Los Cenotes videos. One of the episodes features a cave called Darth Vader, which we explored last year. And that one actually, it was a good day out jungle walking because I was out hiking in an area where I didn't think that there was any other caves or cenotes. Just kind of thinking that, there's nothing here, maybe we get lucky. And found an entrance, free dove in, saw that there was a cabin and that there wasn't any line there. So like, okay, cool. Well, we'll walk back, we'll come back here and dive it another day. And actually on the walk out, saw another little depression off to the side of the path. Went and had a look at that. And again, there was another little cenote, and then free dive down. And that was kind of a nasty one to free dive into because there was a bit of a hydrogen sulfide layer and kind of hard to see, but could see that it kept going down as well. So I was like, this is pretty cool. Found 2 cenotes, no line, one day. So had to go back and dive them. And previously where we'd started walking from was quite a ways away, but then I went, did a dive in each of those, established them that there was going cave, which was super cool. But then on another day, spent a little bit of time driving around some jungle roads and managed to find a way of sort of zigzagging down some random roads and ended up able to park 3 or 4 minute walk from the big one. And a 5-minute walk away from the smaller one. So that then meant that they were a lot more appealing for exploration. And then, we did a bit of exploring, mainly with Philip actually, in both of those and pushed them out. Again, I need to go back and check them, a little bit like you're coming back to your question, but we feel like they were kind of done now. We sort of pushed them out, and the other places to check are not particularly nice. It's going to be small, silty, zero viz, 22-ish meter depth. So if you hang out there for a while, even with the rebreathers, you're going to start to get some deco. We pushed it pretty hard already. So I want to go back and do one last look to tick. There's no more chances here, but I always have in the back of my mind, maybe behind that rock or at the end of that passage where I went left, maybe you could go right. Yeah, Darth Vader definitely is one of those that I want to go back to check it out, but it's not high on their priorities anymore because we did a bunch of dives in there and felt like it got pushed pretty good. Yeah, when it was going, it was good, and then now less appealing to keep exploring it there. always keep it on the back burner and go back one day and see what can be pushed.
Yeah, no, it sounds stunning to me, being in an area like that and then having all of these opportunities in front of you. And of course, there's a lot of cave to dive that's been explored. So for cave divers at different levels, it's just an absolute playground. There's everything from beginner caves and caverns through to caves that are relatively easy to dive, and large caverns, lots of line. Of course, it's navigation is the big thing. And then through to brand new stuff or stuff that's just partially explored. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's a cave diver's playground, really is.
All right, mate. Thank you very much. Again, this is a bonus on top of what we did earlier, and we covered a lot of ground in the first episode. That'll be episode 66. And then to add some to that and to add some more color around what it's like to do the exploration you're doing in terms of walking into the jungle and finding your way into holes and using ladders and ropes and going through hydrogen sulfide layers and restrictions. And of course, weaving the Sidewinder into that, which is very close to all our hearts in terms of many of the divers I'm talking to now who are cave divers in particular. Brilliant units and very well suited and designed. Funny enough, not designed for this purpose originally, but it's found its way to become one of the preeminent rebreathers used in cave diving now. Definitely. And of course, Patrick's involvement in that too must be a massive, massive support in terms of what you guys are doing.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, I got to ask you about the SEAL dry suits too.
Yeah.
I saw the launch yesterday. So I'm halfway through the configurator. Got to go and put my undergarments on and figure out what size I am for everything. So what do you think?
They're very cool. I have enjoyed having one. Sort of came at a good time because my other suits were leaking quite a lot. I do dive most days, so I put a lot of wear and tear on my stuff in general, but also then a lot of the exploration is not kind on equipment. So I have 3 dry suits that are revolving through various stages of repair or disrepair. And so that came at a good time because one suit was just leaking a lot. One needed the seals to be replaced, and I had ordered them from Europe, and the person that was supposed to bring them wasn't able to fly because they were in France and they got locked down at the end of last year. So my seals never got here until someone else brought them out in January or something. So then it was really nice to get the seal suit and to be able to put some divers on it, and mainly just have a cool looking suit that was more or less dry compared to the others.
Yeah. And apart from looking extremely cool, which it does, what's special about it?
It has got the best pockets of all the dry suits, which I'm really happy about, because one suit of mine I got without pockets because I was like, I'm a side mount diver most of my time. I'm just going to use my side mount pouch for all my stuff. The other suit has got one pocket on it, which then I kind of liked. Coming back to the Sidewinder, I don't really like using a side mount pouch with it because I find that, especially if I'm diving low stuff, it sticks up a lot sitting on the back there. So I really like then getting a dry suit that has pockets, because then I can put all my backup stuff in my pockets. Why the pockets are so good, they have a lot of attachment points. It's got a rigid section, so it stays pretty flat if you want it flat, but it's also got a really easy access, like additional wet notes pocket. So for teaching and stuff, it makes it really easy to whip out the wet notes. You don't have to open up the whole pocket. You just reach in, get the wet notes out of the sleeve there in the back, take notes or write to your student or whatever, pop it back out of the way, and then you're good to go. Yeah.
One of my challenges with the Sidewinder is reaching behind me. I really can't get past the cans very easily to get to anything back there anyhow. It's even a bit of a problem for me getting to the attachment points. I can clip reels and spools and so on there, but that's not easy. So in my pockets, I've got an SF Tech dry suit, which I love. It's been brilliant, and it's Kevlar and it's tough as. I haven't ground it too much in caves, a little bit in Jackson Blue, a little bit, and a little bit in Hole in the Wall, but it's been through some really tight spots and wrecks, which in some ways can be harder on dry suits because there's lots of sharp shit everywhere, and you just don't know when you're going to grab something that's sticking out that you didn't see. So it's been brilliant and I love it. It's a super expensive suit is the other thing. And of course, it's supported from Switzerland, which for me in New Zealand has been kind of tough. I've got a local repairer now who works on it, but back to what you said, it's 4 or 5 years old now. It's done a few hundred dives. I've had a couple of leaks in it, which I think is kind of normal. I wouldn't put it down to suit quality. I'd put it down to just normal wear and tear. But getting it repaired when it's away, I don't have a dry suit. So it is worthwhile getting a backup, and hence why I'm looking at the Seal now. amongst a few other things I have to buy. So yeah, I'm excited about that product.
Yeah. I mean, it seems pretty, I haven't managed to put any hole in it, put it like that. So I tried to keep it just for teaching and for comfort for day-to-day use rather than for exploration and stuff. But then it was my only working dry suit for a little while. So then I did go on a fair few exploration dives as well through some pretty small stuff. And hasn't got any tears or anything like that in it. So pretty happy with it from a toughness point of view.
Awesome. Yeah. And have you got that NX XDEEP rigs yet? You must have
they're
tons of sets
supposed to come. Like Patrick said that they're going to get shipped last week, this week, maybe next week. I can't really remember, but we're all waiting.
I've got a set in New Zealand. There's only one double set, so one side mount set or twin set set in New Zealand right now. Cool. Apparently it's earmarked for me and I'm just waiting to get it. So it's in Auckland and I'm in the far north. That's how close it is. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks I'll get to, I might even have it for next weekend. We'll see. So cool. It's going to be exciting to try those as well. So some great new products coming out there.
Yeah, totally. Patrick's had a set for 2 or 3 years now. So seen them around a lot, but never had the opportunity to get my hands on some. So I'm pretty happy about it. And I mean, they look really cool, but also I haven't bought a set of new regs for years and years. So it'd be nice to be able to retire some of my older regs. I
mean, I've been diving Apex XTX 50s forever. When I say forever, since 2012, 13, and they're amazing. You know, they're a brilliant set of rigs, which I love. I don't love the fact that they move sometimes with the din fitting and get leaks there and so on. But once you know how that works, you can work around it. But just performance-wise, they've been brilliant. So they're going to move to kind of my backups and deco cylinder rigs. And then I'm excited about the NX700s. Just the hose routing on them looks just brilliant, both for side mount, back mount, but also for the Sidewinder, I think, for your bailout and diluent or second bailout. That's going to be very, very cool, I think, looking at the way the hoses route on there. It's been very well thought through from that point of view. So excited to have that.
Yeah, that'll be good.
All right, mates. Thank you again. I appreciate your time and also your initiative and reaching out to me and letting me know you had more to say. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the patrons appreciate it. And I'll cut this into a few different things. I think I might even put a little bit of video out on this one, seeing we're such smooth looking guys. We'll get something going there for sure. Say hi to everyone from me. And Patrick, I guess, is back from Brazil sometime this century. So
I think next week. Week. Yeah.
Cool. Pass on my regards, and I will definitely come visit you guys whenever I can get there.
Sounds good.
Cheers, mate.
All right. Take it easy. Bye.
Hey, thanks so much for joining me and listening to this episode. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. It was great to catch up with Skanda again, even though we'd had him on just one episode back. Thanks again to Skanda for sharing with us, especially regarding some of the deeper projects that they've been running and the use of the KISS Sidewinder rebreather to support their exploration. It was just awesome to learn a bit more about that, and also to be able to cover with Skanda a little more on the NX700 rigs and the upcoming SEAL dry suit. I can tell you from personal use, the NX700s are amazing, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more on the SEAL dry suits. Thanks again for joining me. Thank you so much to XDEEP for their support, and also the patrons of Speaking Sidemount. Without that support, this podcast simply would not be possible, so I'm incredibly grateful. Thanks again to all of you as well, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
You've been listening to Speaking Sidemount from www.sidemountpros.com. If you like the podcast, please subscribe and consider leaving us a 5-star review. If there's something you'd like us to cover on the show, then let us know via our Facebook page listed in the podcast notes. Thanks again, and we look forward to you joining us on our next episode of Speaking Sidemount.